The storm had started earlier than expected that night. Daniel Carter adjusted his windshield wipers to the highest speed, but they barely managed to keep up with the torrent. Sheets of rain crashed against the glass like waves on a sinking ship. Thunder rolled in the distance, low, threatening. The kind that vibrated in your chest and made the world feel just a little less safe. He had just left a business dinner at the Carlton Ridge Hotel, a place that served wine that cost more than most people's weekly grocery bills. His driver had taken the night off, and Daniel had insisted on driving himself anyway. He liked nights like these. Solitude. Rain. The feeling that the city was slowing down, quieting, hiding behind wet curtains. It was somewhere near the edge of the city, where the wide corporate avenues began narrowing into cracked, uneven roads lined with forgotten shops, that it happened. He saw her. At first, it didn't register. Just a blur in the headlights. But then her form became clearer, someone standing in the rain, waving wildly, soaked to the skin. Daniel hit the brakes hard. The tires screamed against the slick pavement. His Bentley came to a skidding halt a few feet in front of the woman. Her clothes clung to her frame, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. One hand held a small child tightly against her chest. The child didn't move. "Jesus Christ," Daniel muttered. He looked around, no other cars, no people, just the woman and the storm. His first instinct was hesitation. He wasn't naive. He'd read stories. Highway setups. Fake injuries. Women used as bait while armed men lurked in shadows. But this didn't feel like that. There was something raw in her eyes, real fear. Real desperation. He lowered his window a crack, the rain immediately splattering into the car. "You okay?" he shouted over the downpour. She rushed to the passenger door, yanked it open, and climbed in without a word. Water pooled around her feet, soaking the leather floor mat. She held the girl close, whispering something to her as Daniel watched in stunned silence. I don't know who else to turn to," she said breathlessly. "Please. Just drive. Anywhere." Daniel didn't ask questions. He threw the car back into gear and drove. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The car's heater hummed, fogging up the windows slightly. The woman cradled the girl, who looked no older than 6. Her hair was stringy and wet, her tiny hands limp. Daniel glanced over. "Is she breathing?" "Yes," the woman replied. "But she's burning up. I was trying to get her to a clinic but..." She trailed off. Daniel noticed her hands were trembling, not just from the cold, but from something else. Fear. Maybe guilt. Maybe both. "What happened?" he asked. She shook her head. "It's complicated." He nodded slowly. "Everything worth running from usually is." Silence again. He couldn't help but study her face. Her features were delicate, but worn. Like a painting left out in the rain too long. Dark circles under her eyes. A bruise, faint but noticeable, on her left cheekbone. She couldn't have been older than 30, yet she looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical. After a moment, Daniel reached into the back seat and pulled out his coat. He handed it to her. She looked at it like it was made of gold. "Thank you," she whispered. He turned his attention back to the road. They were on the highway now, speeding toward the city center. Emergency clinics, hospitals, safety, anything had to be better than where she'd come from. Then, barely audible over the hum of tires on wet asphalt, she said something that made every hair on Daniel's neck stand up. "They think we're dead." He glanced at her sharply. "Who?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out the window, her face partially reflected in the glass. "We were supposed to disappear," she said. "We almost did." Before Daniel could press further, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. A black SUV, sleek and fast, was gaining on them. At first, Daniel thought it was just a car trying to pass in the storm. But it stayed close. Too close. High beams flashed, once, twice. "Do you know that car?" Daniel asked. The woman looked back, her face drained of color. She didn't answer, but her grip on the child tightened. That was answer enough. Daniel's jaw clenched. He wasn't the kind of man who scared easily. Years in corporate boardrooms and hostile negotiations had taught him how to hold his ground. But this wasn't some hostile merger. This was something else. "Hold on," he said. He pressed down on the accelerator. The Bentley surged forward, tires spinning slightly on the slick road. The SUV kept pace. Another flash of headlights. Then, swerving. Trying to box him in. "What the hell is this?" Daniel muttered. The woman spoke quickly, her voice low and urgent. "He doesn't want anyone to know what happened at the house. Not me. Not her. If he sees us, he'll finish it." "Who is he?" She hesitated. "My husband." Daniel didn't speak. He didn't need to. Everything was beginning to make a chilling kind of sense. The SUV drew closer, tailgating aggressively now. It veered left, then right, like it was trying to force Daniel off the road. He scanned the highway for an exit. Anything. Then, there. A small side road, nearly invisible in the rain. He swerved onto it without warning, tires screeching. The SUV overshot by a few seconds, giving him just enough time to disappear into the narrow street lined with warehouses and abandoned buildings. The woman turned in her seat, trying to peer through the rear window. "Did we lose him?" "For now," Daniel said. He pulled into a covered alley behind an old printing warehouse and killed the engine. The rain still thundered on the roof above them, but it felt like the world had paused. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Daniel turned to her. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." The woman exhaled slowly, like the weight of her entire story was caught in her lungs. She looked down at the child, her daughter, and brushed a wet curl from her forehead. "My name is Lila," she said. "This is Ava." Daniel nodded. "My husband, Mason, he's not who people think he is. Everyone sees him as this successful businessman. Charming. Powerful. Untouchable. But behind closed doors, he's dangerous. Controlling. Violent. I tried to leave before. But he found me. Told me if I ever tried again, no one would find my body." She swallowed hard. "A few nights ago, I overheard something, him on the phone, talking about someone he'd gotten rid of. Not fired. Not ruined. Gotten rid of. Like, killed. I don't know who, or how, but the way he said it. I knew he meant it." She blinked away tears. "He caught me listening. And that's when he decided we had to go. Me and Ava. He staged it. Made it look like we'd died in a car crash. Burned the car. Fake IDs, everything. I don't know how. But he has people. He's done this before. I just..." She choked on her words. "I grabbed Ava and ran. We've been hiding ever since. But someone saw us. He's tracking us." Daniel sat in stunned silence. This was no ordinary domestic dispute. This was something deeper. Dirtier. Something that reeked of corruption and danger. And now, he was in the middle of it. He looked at Ava again. Her breathing was shallow. Fevered. She needed help. Now. "We need to get her to a hospital," Daniel said firmly. "Now. I have a friend, private clinic. Quiet. Discreet. Lila looked terrified. What if he finds us? He won't, Daniel said. Not tonight. He started the engine. And this time, he didn't hesitate. The tires hissed across the rain-slicked road, and the city blurred past in streaks of wet neon. Ava's breathing had become faster, more shallow. Her tiny body was burning with fever, trembling occasionally in her mother's arms. Lila held her daughter close, whispering softly, as though her words alone could hold the girl in this world a little longer. Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. We're almost there, he said, not taking his eyes off the road. Just hang on. They reached a narrow side street, the kind only locals or those who paid to disappear would know about. At the very end stood a squat, windowless building, camouflaged behind a shuttered laundromat and a pawn shop with flickering signage. A discreet silver plaque near the door read, Horizon Wellness, by appointment only. Daniel parked close and helped Lila out of the car. She clutched Ava tightly, her feet unsteady. You trust these people? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I pay them enough to be trustworthy, Daniel replied. And more to be silent. He rang the buzzer. A voice crackled through the speaker. Yes? It's Carter. Emergency. There was a pause. Then a loud metallic clunk, and the door unlocked. Inside, the clinic was pristine. Bright but not blinding, quiet but not dead. White walls, faint music, the sterile scent of antiseptics. A tall woman in a white coat appeared instantly from the hallway, glancing at Ava in Lila's arms. Room 3, she said. Now. They were ushered into a private examination room. No forms. No ID. No questions. Dr. Madeline Reese had worked with Daniel before, mostly when his billionaire acquaintances needed medical discretion. She was brilliant, precise, and just cynical enough to operate in this shadowy space between legality and loyalty. She's burning up, Lila said, her panic rising again. She wasn't like this morning. Let me take a look, Dr. Reese interrupted calmly, slipping on gloves. You're safe here. She took Ava from Lila gently and laid her on the bed. Monitors beeped softly. Reese checked her temperature, pupils, heart rate. She moved quickly but carefully. She's dehydrated, Reese murmured. Heart rate's high, fever's at 104.8. We need to cool her down and get fluids into her immediately. Reese nodded at the nurse, who began preparing an 4-drip and fever meds. Daniel took a breath. Will she be okay? If you'd brought her in 2 hours later, Reese shook her head. It could have gone the other way. But yes, if she responds to fluids and antipyretics, she'll recover. You did the right thing. Lila collapsed into the chair by Ava's bed, a sob of relief escaping her lips. She covered her face, her entire body shaking now that the moment of danger had passed. Daniel stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, mind racing. He had dealt with hostile corporate takeovers, billion-dollar lawsuits, and dangerous power games, but this was something else entirely. A man like Mason, violent, connected, manipulative, wasn't going to stop. Not because Lila had left. Not because she'd survived. Especially not because she'd survived. An hour passed. Ava was sleeping now, her fever steadily dropping under Reese's care. Lila hadn't moved from her side. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands wrapped tightly around Ava's. Daniel walked back into the room with 2 cups of coffee. She accepted the cup with a tired nod. Thank you. You don't have to keep thanking me, Daniel said softly. But I do need to know more, about Mason. About what he's hiding. Lila stared into the steam rising from the coffee. You're sure you want to know? Because once I tell you, you'll be in this too. And he doesn't just ruin people's lives, Daniel. He erases them. Daniel didn't flinch. Tell me anyway. She nodded slowly. I met Mason when I was 25, she began. I was working part-time at an interior design firm. He came in, looking for someone to redo his penthouse. At first, he was charming. Intelligent. Kind. He paid attention to every detail. To me. She paused. I didn't see the signs then. Not until I was already in love. Already pregnant. He changed after Ava was born. Started keeping tabs on me. Every call, every text. Then came the first time he hit me, and the first time he apologized with diamonds. Daniel clenched his jaw. Classic abuser cycle. It got worse when I started asking questions about his business. I wasn't supposed to know anything about the private vault under his house. Or the visitors he met at 3 a.m. Or the fact that some of them never came back. Her voice dropped. He's laundering money. But not just that. He's moving people. Girls. Young ones. Daniel's expression darkened. Human trafficking? Lila nodded. He uses his offshore investments as cover. He owns a logistics company, he moves product through his legitimate freight containers. Daniel ran a hand down his face. Christ. He kept records. Digital. I wasn't supposed to see them. But I did. One night, I found the files. Names. Dates. Photos. They weren't just missing girls, they were sold. Catalogued. Even their ages were listed. Like, merchandise. Her voice cracked. I took screenshots. Saved them to a hidden drive. But I never got a chance to send them anywhere. The next day, Mason told me someone had broken into our home. That the security cameras caught a female intruder on the network. He said it with this look in his eye, like he knew. Like he was waiting to see if I'd lie. Did you? She nodded. I denied everything. Played dumb. But I knew it was only a matter of time before he found the drive. So I ran. Daniel stared at her. Where is it? She reached into her soaked handbag and pulled out a tiny, silver USB drive. Here. It's encrypted. I used a friend's help, someone from college. I don't even know if it'll work anymore. Daniel took the drive gently, as if it might shatter. We'll find out. The next morning, as Ava continued to stabilize, Daniel made a few calls. His contacts in cybersecurity owed him favors, and Daniel Carter didn't cash those favors in lightly. By noon, he had a decrypted folder on his laptop, Mason_archive. What he found inside made his stomach churn. Hundreds of documents. Offshore transfers. Confidential shipping manifests marked with initials, aliases, birth years, some as young as 10. Video footage. Surveillance images. Some of the girls were already in national databases, classified as missing. And there was more. Emails between Mason and foreign buyers. Proof of cooperation with police officers in 2 U.S. cities. Payoffs. Silenced investigations. It was a global operation masquerading as a family-run business. Daniel sat back, cold sweat running down his spine. He understood now why Lila had said what she said. Mason didn't ruin people. He erased them. And now, Daniel had the key to bring him down. But power like Mason's didn't fall easily. That night, back at the clinic, Daniel showed Lila the decrypted folder. She couldn't even look at the screen for long. I told you, she said, her voice hollow. I told you it was bigger than it looked. Daniel closed the laptop. We're going to expose him. But we do it smart. Quiet. We leak this to someone who won't back down. A reporter. A federal contact. Not local PD, he owns half of them. Lila looked scared again. You don't have to do this. Daniel looked at her seriously. Yes, I do. They didn't know it yet, but that single decision, to fight back, was going to set off a chain of events that none of them could stop. Mason had already found the burned car. He already knew the body inside wasn't Lila's. He had already put men on the street. And by the time the first encrypted leak hit a reporter's inbox 3 days later, there would already be blood on the ground. 3 days later. Time, 4:47 a.m. The rain had stopped, but the storm had only just begun. Daniel stood at the window of his penthouse apartment, overlooking the city skyline. From here, the world still looked beautiful, quiet and sleeping. But he knew that peace was an illusion. Somewhere down in the dark corners of that city, a monster had woken up. The encrypted files Lila had risked her life to smuggle out were no longer hidden. He'd passed them to an investigative journalist named Nadia Reyes, someone who owed Daniel a favor and had a reputation for exposing the kind of stories that other media outlets were too afraid to touch. She'd spent 48 hours vetting the data, confirming identities, tracing wire transfers. And tonight, at 2:03 a.m., she had published the first article. Global human trafficking operation linked to billionaire Mason Vale. The story hit the internet like a Molotov cocktail. Screens lit up. Phones buzzed. Within an hour, the dark web was aflame with encrypted chats warning operatives to go underground. Some of Mason's shell companies immediately shut down their websites. Even a few mid-level employees had deleted their LinkedIn accounts and vanished. But Mason Vale himself? He didn't hide. He called a press conference. Later that morning, 10 a.m. Lila stared at the television in the clinic's break room, her face pale. Daniel stood beside her, arms folded, jaw tight. There he was, Mason, standing at a polished podium, smiling like the world still belonged to him. His designer suit was immaculate, his voice calm and righteous as he addressed the media. These accusations are nothing more than slander, a coordinated attack against my name and family. These so-called documents are fabricated. It's a smear campaign orchestrated by individuals who want to damage my legacy and destroy my business. He looked into the cameras like a man with nothing to fear. I will be pursuing every legal channel to uncover who is behind this defamation. And I will not rest until they are brought to justice. Lila's hands trembled. He's turning it all around. Just like I knew he would. Daniel shut off the TV. Let him talk. That's all it is, noise. The real war is happening in the background. Nadia Reyes' apartment, 1:12 p.m. Nadia's apartment was dark except for the glow of her laptop screen. She sat surrounded by files, coffee mugs, and 3 phones, one for work, one for personal use, and one encrypted burner. The burner rang. She picked up immediately. Yeah? Daniel's voice. Calm. Controlled. But there was weight in it. You need to move. She sat up straighter. What? Mason's putting out bounties. Not just legal threats, real ones. He wants names. Yours. Mine. Lila's. And he has people who don't ask questions. Nadia swallowed. Too late. I already had someone at my door this morning, said they were a PI working for a tech firm. I didn't buy it. Where are you now? Packing. I'll send you a driver. Move fast. Don't stay on any one signal for more than an hour. We'll put you in a safe house. She hesitated, her journalist instincts at war with her survival instincts. Then she nodded. Okay. But I'm not stopping. I wouldn't want you to. Back at the clinic, 3:08 p.m. Ava was awake. Still pale. Still weak. But awake. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, adjusting to the light. The first thing she saw was her mother, Lila, slumped in the chair beside her, fast asleep from exhaustion, one hand still holding Ava's tiny fingers. "Mom?" Ava's voice was raspy. Lila jolted upright, her face brightening instantly. "Ava, baby, you're awake." Ava nodded slowly. "It's cold." Lila pulled the blanket higher, tears forming in her eyes. "You're safe now, sweetheart. I promise." Daniel stood quietly in the doorway, watching the reunion. A part of him had never wanted children, too messy, too emotional, too unpredictable. But watching Lila hold her daughter like a miracle had just happened changed something in him. Deep down. He couldn't explain it yet. But he felt it. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted contact. "Incoming threat. Get out. Now." Daniel stiffened. "Lila," he said sharply, "we need to leave. Right now." "What?" She looked at him, alarmed. "No time to explain. Grab Ava. We're moving." The attack. They were halfway to the elevator when the explosion hit. It wasn't huge, not cinematic, but it was precise. Controlled. A small device planted near the back entrance of the clinic. Designed to cause panic and chaos, not death. But the message was clear. Nowhere is safe. Smoke flooded the hallway. Alarms blared. Nurses screamed. Daniel grabbed Ava, and Lila followed, coughing as they made their way to the emergency stairwell. Through the smoke and sprinklers, Daniel saw a figure, dressed like a janitor, holding a phone, watching them. No weapon, just eyes. Tracking. Not killing. Yet. They burst out the side door and into Daniel's waiting SUV. His backup driver, Marcus, floored at the moment the doors shut. Daniel turned to Lila. "He knows where we are now. Every move from here has to be ghosted. No phones. No cards. No digital trail." Lila held Ava tight, shielding her ears from the noise. "What do we do now?" she asked. Daniel stared out the window. "We go to war." Mason Vale's private estate, that night. Mason walked barefoot across his imported marble floors, sipping wine like a man who'd already won. In his study, 6 monitors showed 6 different locations: his lawyer's office, a press monitoring station, 2 of his shipping warehouses, a government liaison's encrypted chat, and the live feed from a private investigator's body cam. The last feed showed Daniel's SUV driving away from the clinic. He smiled. "Run all you like, Carter," he murmured. "You don't know the game like I do." Then his smile faded. Because for the first time, someone had outplayed him in the press. Someone had exposed his secret and survived. And that made Daniel Carter dangerous. Safe house, next day. A secluded lake house, 2 hours outside the city. No cameras. No Wi-Fi. Daniel's people swept it for bugs before they even stepped inside. Ava was resting again. Lila was sitting at the kitchen table, staring out at the water. Daniel placed a folder in front of her. "What's this?" she asked. "A plan," he said. "To end Mason. Not just expose him, destroy him." Inside the folder, a list of whistleblowers. Former employees who'd disappeared. One of them, a port manager in Georgia, was still alive and in hiding. Daniel had found him. He was willing to talk. And more than that, the final piece. Mason's personal offshore account, tied to a single private bank in Luxembourg. With that proof, Mason couldn't just deny the allegations. He could be extradited. Convicted. Imprisoned. Lila's eyes widened. Can we really do this? Daniel leaned forward. Yes. But we have to move now. Before he buries everything. Just then, the burner phone rang. Daniel answered. It was Nadia. We've got a problem, she said. 2 of my sources went dark. One was doxed. The other's car exploded an hour ago. This is getting ugly. Daniel nodded grimly. We're running out of time. The final play, to be continued. 3 days later, remote motel, Savannah, Georgia. 6:44 p.m. A rickety ceiling fan spun above them, creaking every half turn. The dim yellow light flickered as a gust of wind pushed against the flimsy motel window. A TV murmured low static in the background. Everything about the place screamed, no questions, no credit cards. Daniel Carter sat on the edge of a lumpy mattress, hands clasped, listening. Across from him sat Elijah Rourke, gaunt, jittery, unshaven. Once the operations manager at Vailport Logistics, Elijah had seen it all. He was one of the few people who knew how Mason's trafficking ring really worked, and one of the only people who had made it out alive. Do you know what happens when you disappear from Mason's world? Elijah said quietly. It's not just like you quit. It's like you never existed. I buried my name. Burned my ID. Moved state to state. But he still found me. Once. Lila, who sat nearby holding a sleeping Ava in her lap, whispered, then why meet us? Why now? Elijah looked at her. Eyes sunken with the kind of fatigue only guilt could carve. Because you didn't run for yourself. You ran for her. He pointed to Ava. And because someone finally hit Mason where it hurt, public exposure. Daniel leaned forward. We need your statement. Testimony. The whole thing. Names. Dates. Routes. Money trails. You know how the system works. We already have the documents, we just need a voice to make them real. Elijah nodded slowly. You'll get it. But we do it my way. 1 hour, 1 recorder. After that, I disappear. And if I end up dead, make sure that leak spreads so far it ends up in the Vatican's inbox. Daniel smirked. Deal. Elijah pulled a worn leather notebook from his coat and set it on the table. You might want to sit down, he said, because what I'm about to tell you doesn't just involve Mason. Daniel's jaw clenched. I'm listening. What Elijah told them. It started years ago. Mason Vale's rise wasn't just due to luck or business acumen. It was orchestrated. According to Elijah, Mason partnered early with a foreign security contractor who operated out of East Africa and Eastern Europe. Together, they funneled stolen passports, orphan records, and underground brokers into the system under the guise of private cargo contracts. The scheme wasn't just about trafficking young girls, it was about manufacturing identities. The girls came in through the ports. They didn't have names, just tags. We were told to scan them, upload their intake profiles, and sort them into the safehouse network. But there were no safehouses. Just distribution centers. Lila looked horrified. What happened to them? Some were sold locally. Some were sent overseas. Some were marked with a red tag, those never came back. Elijah's hands shook. I quit after I watched one of the red-tagged girls jump into the bay trying to escape. They didn't stop her. Just watched her drown. Said it was good for the books. He took a long breath. The people involved. It's not just Mason. It's customs officials. Logistics companies. Law firms. Even a sitting congressman. Daniel's blood ran cold. Do you have names? Elijah flipped open the notebook. 26. 1 hour later, drive back to Atlanta. The rain returned as they drove through the dark, Ava asleep in the back seat. Daniel stared at the digital recorder sitting on the dashboard like it was a bomb. Lila broke the silence. So what now? Send the tape to the DOJ? Another article? No, Daniel said. Not yet. Mason's going to feel this one. And he'll lash out harder than ever. We need to hit him before he hits back. He dialed a number on the secure phone. Nadia. We've got a first-hand witness. You're going to publish everything. The whole story. But not in pieces, one massive drop. Monday morning. Audio, documents, and names. Make it unignorable. Got it, Nadia replied. And Daniel, be careful. He's panicking. That's when men like Mason become monsters. Meanwhile. Mason's estate, Atlanta. 1:27 a.m. A fist slammed into the oak conference table. Mason's face was red, his tie undone, his eyes wild. Around him, 5 men sat in silence, his inner circle of legal, political, and financial shields. But even they looked uneasy tonight. You told me we buried Elijah Rourke, Mason growled. The man across from him, a former mercenary now turned fixer, said nothing. Now he's alive, talking to Carter, leaking years of intel. What the hell are you even good for? The fixer stood. You're losing control, Mason. Wrong move. Mason drew a silver pistol from his jacket and shot him once, clean through the temple. Blood splattered across the hardwood floor. The rest of the table didn't flinch, just stared in cold understanding. I don't lose, Mason said, eyes narrowing. I adapt. I burn everything around them until the truth becomes irrelevant. He leaned closer. Find the girl. Find Lila. Bring me Carter. I don't care what it takes. Safe house, early morning. Daniel's contact, Marcus, paced by the window. They'll find us, he said. Eventually. His reach is too wide. I say we move again. Daniel shook his head. No more running. He placed a map on the table. We hit one of his containers. Live. Tonight. Lila looked up, stunned. What are you talking about? I found the location of a scheduled shipment. Midnight drop. Real people, real cargo. Elijah's intel matches. If we intercept it, we don't just leak stories, we save lives. And we give law enforcement undeniable proof. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's not just exposure. That's a declaration of war. Daniel nodded. Good. Midnight, Port of Brunswick, Georgia. The port was quiet, a graveyard of steel containers stacked high under a low-hanging moon. Daniel, Marcus, and 2 trusted ex-military operatives crept through the rows. Lila stayed behind in the SUV with Ava and a burner radio, her heart pounding. They located container B-32, the one Elijah had marked. Marcus picked the lock, and the door creaked open. Inside, 7 girls. Terrified. Dirty. Shivering. Daniel stepped back, throat tight. He called it in. Nadia. We've got them. Get the press. Get backup. It's time. As they helped the girls out, headlights flashed behind them, 4 black SUVs barreling into the port. Go! Daniel shouted. Gunfire erupted. Marcus returned fire, giving cover as Daniel and the others rushed the girls to safety. One of the operatives took a shot to the shoulder but kept moving. From the SUV, Lila saw the chaos unfold and screamed into the radio. Daniel, please, get out. Back at the safe house, Dawn. Somehow, they made it back. One girl had a dislocated ankle. Another had hypothermia. But they were alive. Nadia met them there, eyes wide. "It's already going viral," she said. "That raid was filmed. Someone live-streamed it. The girls. The containers. The men shooting. Everyone's talking now. The world is watching." Daniel sat down, breathless. "We did it." Lila placed Ava on his lap. The girl wrapped her arms around his neck without hesitation. For the first time, Daniel didn't resist. He held her close. But it wasn't over. Mason had gone dark. And in the darkness, he was planning his endgame. One final strike to bury everything. Even if it meant dragging Daniel and Lila into hell with him. 3 days after the raid. Undisclosed location, North Georgia safe house. The fire crackled in the small cabin's hearth, but no one was warm. Not really. The safe house was buried deep in the woods, isolated from any cell towers or roads. That was the point. Silence had never felt so loud. Daniel stood at the window, jaw tight, watching the trees. He hadn't slept. His shoulder still throbbed from the bullet that grazed him during the raid, but that wasn't why he was awake. Something was wrong. Too quiet. Too easy. After exposing the trafficking ring and rescuing the girls at Brunswick Port, public opinion had flipped violently. Videos were circulating non-stop. Journalists had descended on the story like wolves. Politicians were scrambling to disassociate from Mason Vale. Yet Mason himself had vanished. No press statements. No threats. No retaliation. Just absence. And Daniel knew better than to think silence meant surrender. "Coffee?" Lila asked softly behind him, holding out a mug. Her hair was messy, eyes tired, but she was trying. Always trying. He took it. "Thanks." She stepped closer. Still no sign of him. Daniel shook his head. "He's not gone. Just waiting. Planning something." Lila bit her lip. "We should move again." Before Daniel could respond, Marcus burst in from the back porch, eyes wide. He took Nadia. Daniel froze. "What?" Marcus slammed a phone on the table. Anonymous tip. Her burner was traced. Someone intercepted her car 20 minutes ago on a back road. No police, no ransom, just, gone. Lila gasped. "Oh my God." Ava looked up from coloring on the floor. "Who's Nadia?" Daniel knelt beside her. "A friend. But she's in trouble, and I need to help her, okay?" Ava nodded, serious. "Okay." Lila's voice trembled. "What do we do?" Daniel stood. "We go into the lion's den." Meanwhile, Mason's underground compound. The walls were concrete. Cold. Windowless. Nadia Reyes sat tied to a steel chair under a flickering bulb, blood dripping from a split in her eyebrow. A man in a suit paced in front of her, thin, expressionless, surgical in his calm. Then Mason walked in. No longer smiling. He knelt beside her. "You're brave," he said softly. "I'll give you that." Nadia glared. "You're going to prison." "Am I?" Mason chuckled, then looked at the camera in the corner. "You see, that's where you're wrong. I don't go to prison. I erase the world around me before it reaches me." He stood. "Carter's clever. He got far. But he made a mistake." "What mistake?" Nadia spat blood. Mason smiled now. "He trusted you." Atlanta, Daniel's war room. Daniel and Nadia made it to the south corridor, but before they could escape, Masso. She looked at him. "Then why do you keep doing this?" He took a breath. Because if I don't, I feel like I'm letting him win. Lila was quiet. You ever think about leaving? Disappearing? Sometimes, he admitted. She looked up at him. Would you take us with you? Daniel hesitated. Then, yes. Ava ran to them, arms out. Look what I drew. She held up a scribbled picture, 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a rainbow. I named it, My Forever People. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. A crack in the armor. He knelt. It's beautiful. Meanwhile, a dark room, unknown location. A man in a designer suit poured whiskey over ice. He sat in front of a large digital board showing maps, faces, wire transfers, and headlines about the Veil case. He tapped on Daniel's face. Then Lila's. Then Ava's. Then he smiled. Time to move the game, he whispered. Behind him, 5 others nodded in the dark. 1 month later, Madrid, Spain. Daniel walked briskly through Barajas Airport with Lila and Ava in tow. They were on their way to an international summit on child trafficking. At customs, the officer studied their passports. Stamped them. You're the man from the news, aren't you? He asked. Daniel nodded. Trying to help. The officer paused. Then leaned in. Be careful, senor. They watch airports too. At the summit. The room buzzed with global experts, NGOs, politicians, and activists. Daniel took the stage to thunderous applause. He opened his speech not with data, not with numbers, but with a name. Ava Grace Harris, he said. Was almost another number. Almost another headline. Almost another ghost. He paused. But today, she is coloring under the Spanish sun, dreaming of becoming a teacher. Because we did something. He pointed at the crowd. But we haven't done enough. Flashbulbs clicked. The world listened. Later that night, hotel balcony. Lila and Daniel stood side by side, sipping tea, watching the skyline. We should get married, she said suddenly. Daniel choked slightly. You serious? She grinned. Not for romance. For protection. Legal rights. Guardianship. If something happens to you. Ava needs a safe parent on record. Daniel smiled. Then, okay. Lila blinked. Wait, seriously? He turned to her. I was waiting for you to ask. They laughed, quiet and tired and whole. Ava, from inside, yelled, Did you say yes? Daniel turned to her. We both did. Final scene, U.S. prison, Supermax facility. Mason sat alone in his 8x10 cell. No window. No mirror. No visitors. Just the sound of guards passing by. He stared at the wall, where someone had scratched a name. Ava. He growled and punched it until his knuckles bled. But the name stayed.